It is 10 o'clock and I will call this meeting to order. The chair notes there is a quorum present and we'll do the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, 2.0 is additions and revisions to the agenda. Do you guys have anything?
I don't have anything.
Okay. 3.0 is correspondence and public comment. We'll start with public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time and at other times throughout the meeting. Speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair. Give your name and address and limit comments to 3 minutes. I will say for folks who are joining on Zoom that if you dialed in at *6 to unmute yourself or the lower left hand of your Zoom screen. And I also always remind folks that we are very informal. So as we move through the agenda, if there's something that you want to talk about, ask questions about, we welcome that engagement as we work through the agenda items. So without any public comments. 10 of them. Let's just go this way. We'll start with Leah.
Okay. Leah Shannon, I am here today on behalf of Waste Management. And as you know, we have the little green train, the little green switch train. We have done some replicas of the little green switch train.
Oh, cool.
And I just wanted today to present the court with the replica as good partners with Waste Management. So,
Wonderful. Oh, it's cute. Thank you, Leah.
that's all I have.
Fantastic. Go ahead.
I'm going to go before Liam.
Oh, okay.
That's okay?
Yeah.
I'm Chris Patton. I'm the Gilliam County Justice of the Peace, and my address is Michael, Oregon. Dear Gilliam County Court, Leona Foster is requesting to be on the agenda of the Gilliam County Court's next regularly scheduled meeting to consider her reclassification request. I am in full support of her request. In the meantime, please come to the court and watch the operation of the court and ask questions about duties and responsibilities that Leona fulfills. She has been a faithful and competent employee of Gilliam County for the past 23 years and has never asked anything of the county court. She has been classified incorrectly on the salary schedule, having been classified as an administrative assistant, but she is actually fulfilling functions as a court administrator. The union contract lays out a process for reclassification, and she began that process a year ago. Please place her request on the next agenda. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm Leona Foster. I'm with the Justice Court, and I'm from Arlington. I was hired July of 1998 as a part-time docket clerk. In 1999, I moved into the administrative assistant job. There are 2 reasons I'm asking this request for reclassification. In the year since I was hired, new hires' starting wages are, of course, more than when I started. Then they receive step increases, which means I'm falling further and further behind. Example, my coworker hired in 2013 now makes $3.55 less than I do. And she'll get another step increase. And I'm here almost 24 years and I'm stepped out. Okay, the second is the job keeps evolving and changing, legislative, technology, and also jobs which belong to other departments I took over because they made more sense to be included in my duties. And if you want to come in and talk with us, we can go over that. Chris has tried multiple times over the years to see what I needed to do to get an increase in wages, as she saw others outpacing me. She was told over and over, I must go through the union. More than a year ago, I asked again about how to get a raise. The answer from the union steward, I had to go through the union rep. January 2021, I was given the contact information for Alan, our representative at that time. February 9th of 2021, I emailed Alan. He would respond, but no information telling me what I needed to do. I'd wait, no updates, so I'd send another email, and so on. And if you want a copy of those emails, I can provide them. July of 2021, the union representative Brenda contacted me. That finally started the ball rolling. We started gathering information so we could approach the county court. After some discussion, research, and Chris's recommendation, it was apparent that my job description fits more as a court administrator than an administrative assistant. We gathered a list of my duties, my job description, and other departments who had comparable job descriptions. So after typing a new proposed description, Brenda submitted this request to Judge Farrar on November 17th. And an important note, if I were to quit, this job would be reclassified. I've been very patient through this whole process, and for those reasons, I'm asking my request for reclassification be considered.
Any other public comments? All right. Under correspondence, there is Paul's quarterly veteran service update. So that is in there for anybody who is interested in seeing it. All of the correspondence, as well as all of the books that we're going to talk about today, are always on the county's website under the county court's meeting agenda. So anybody interested in seeing all of the great stuff that Paul does, every time this comes up, I also remind folks that if you know of veterans in our communities that could use some assistance, accessing benefits that they're entitled to, those kinds of things, Paul Conway is in the courthouse on Thursdays, but works for all 3 counties. And so please help connect those veterans to him. He is a fantastic resource and can help our veterans if they run into trouble with the VA or other things. So I always want to put that plug out there that please use him. And if you know of folks who are struggling, connect them to him. He's fantastic. With that, let's go into consent agenda.
Do you have anything?
I do not.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of January 5th, 2022 regular meeting minutes, and consider reappointment of Chris Fitzsimmons to the Gilliam County Fair Board effective January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's move into unfinished business. 5.1 is consider approval of bid for elected officials salary survey. So just to recap this, the compensation committee had asked us to do a salary survey of the elected officials to assist them in their work, which will take place here in just a few short months. And so I had reached out to 2 different firms. One, Tree Hill Consulting, had declined to provide us a proposal. The second one was from HR Answers. We noted during the last conversation that proposal does include state comparatives. So I'll just put that on the record again, as that was an issue that was raised. And yeah, so we're looking for whether we want to go forward with this or
Did you get your
solicit
question
more
answered?
proposals.
Yeah, a couple of things, and I did not get much from, which doesn't surprise me, from Shelley, and that I knew that the survey they had done recently was just, they pulled an old one up and they kind of updated, and One Tree had done that. So her suggestion was that we contact HR Answers and get a quote.
Okay.
But I do know that in that December meeting, you were going to see if there's anybody else too, but we didn't talk about that the last meeting. So I think obviously Wasco County is going through one right now too. So they're obviously using HR Answers. So I mean, I don't have a problem with it at this point.
Yeah, I feel comfortable. I think we definitely, if we want to have this ready in time for the compensation board to actually use it, I think we need to get moving on it. So do we have a motion to accept the bid?
I move to accept HR Answers bid for elected officials salary survey as presented the last 2 weeks.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the HR Answers bid for the elected official salary survey as presented in the previous two meetings. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Let's move on to, this is 5.2, which is consider approval of memorandum of agreement with Condon Chamber of Commerce for small business grant programs. So this is just circling back. You remember back in September, we met with Kaylin, came to one of our meetings. We agreed in at least concept to move forward with establishing a small business grant program. I have been working with Kaylin as well as our legal counsel, Lori Cooper, in getting a memorandum of agreement put together. The draft that was sent to you originally in the packet had not yet been reviewed by Lori. And I wasn't sure she would be able to get back to us in time for court. She did, and I forwarded that to you yesterday. So apologies for the late notice. The only things is she had a little bit of legalese on the period thing. She just was concerned about making sure we were clear about when it was actually going to be effective. And then there was some numbering issues that she wanted us to fix, but otherwise didn't have anything in terms of legal concerns. So the big questions I think for us are the amount per year, if you guys are comfortable with the 75,000, or if we want to look at a different number, the term of the agreement. Because we're sort of midway through a fiscal year, we had originally talked about 3 years. And so I kind of fudged a little bit and did 3 plus what's left of this fiscal year, if that makes sense. And then the other big point of question is the administrative fee. I think those are sort of the big, and then of course, whether we think those 3 sort of buckets that we discussed previously make sense in terms of the actual grant usage. Where do you guys want to start?
I think we originally started talking about 60,000, didn't we? I mean, I don't have a problem with 75.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure where that came from when we decided.
Yeah, I think originally we had talked about 65 because I think that's roughly what is coming out of the waste management funds dedicated to the small business loan. But we have the flexibility, I think, to take this out of our economic development fund, which is, I mean, I think there's 3.5 million this year that's in there right now. So we have
And
some
then in
leeway.
flexibility, we did talk a little bit about being mobile enough that we use that up, we could move on to. I know that's not really part of this agreement, but
No, it's in here. Under the funds, it says the county will provide organization 75,000 per fiscal year. The county may provide organization with additional funds at its discretion if the funds are fully expended and upon written request from the organization. So Kaylin could come back to us if that goes
She
out.
had more
Mhm,
requests that she could do.
definitely.
and then the fee, is that the administration fee, is that going to be in addition to the 75 or part of it?
It's up to you guys. I mean, I think based on this, that it would be an addition. So it would be
Yeah,
the
that's the way I do it.
75, and then, unless you guys didn't want to spend that amount of money, and then if we could
Just
write it so it's
clarification.
taken out. Okay. My idea was that it would be 75 for the grant, and then we would, on top of that, send the administrative
That
fee.
would be additional cost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So do we know, or do we have any, for grant administration fees, any comparables on?
I mean,
I know the state, when they first came out, it was 5%.
Yeah.
The other 5 on the original business assistance with COVID.
Well, I think Kaylin did some research when we asked him to do the last time during the COVID. And this is what she had.
Well, I know that was your pitch. for sure.
Kaylin's on.
Absolutely.
She's smiling. Kaylin, do you want to speak to that?
I would just say that 10% is a standard administrative fee for grants. In supporting this grant program and us in turn supporting these Gilliam County businesses, that grant fee is just supporting our work, our efforts. It'll pay for programs that we have to put in to effectively manage this grant in a way that is solid with really great reporting. So I would just really encourage the court to consider the 75 for the businesses and the 10% to the chamber. So in the 3 years, we have a full $225,000 minimum that will go to Gilliam County businesses. And then on the other side, you're also supporting your chamber, which is supporting these stronger, more sustainable communities.
And I did want to note as well that under the eligible project activities, that I left in, this was kind of a template that we had used when the chamber did some of our COVID relief. And so originally when we partnered with the chamber, the expectation was that in addition to actually providing the grant, that Kaylin was going to be doing a lot of connectivity to other resources. So we don't just want to hand money to businesses and say, good luck. We want to make sure that we're connecting them in, making sure that their books are solid, all of those kinds of things so that they're sustainable on their own. And so that those expectations are still in here. And I think that's reasonable to expect that in addition to just handing the check, we want the chamber really helping those businesses long-term stay sustainable. And so hopefully we've sort of captured that in the expectations under the project activities. But it's broader than just cutting a check. I want the public to kind of understand that the expectation is a greater one. And that Kaylin, frankly, is going to continue to engage on a regional level to keep connecting businesses with each other and with other resources that we have in the region.
Absolutely. Ongoing support through technical assistance. We recently just received a Business Oregon grant to help these businesses. So let's say one of the businesses uses this to expand their business. Great, they've expanded. Now we can also use and leverage some of these Business Oregon dollars to help them get additional services. So this is just going to be an incredible addition to the services that we are providing on top of, the existing grant program.
So it sounds like, if I'm correct, that the $75,000 did not cause any heartburn.
Yep.
Okay. The administrative fee, how do we feel about 10%?
Good.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. The time frame, are you guys okay with the three plus year time frame? And then if this is something that at that point it'll be a new court and the new court wants to extend, they can obviously just amend this agreement and extend the duration if they like. Okay. In terms of in the eligible project activities, there are 3 programs. Retention and expansion of existing businesses, startup and development of new businesses, that would be a separate thing, and then emergency needs that would otherwise lead to permanent closure. So I'm thinking like, I don't know, we had a catastrophic flood or something and people didn't have flood insurance, or, we're talking about something that is really unexpected, not just, hey, I'm not sustainable and I can't pay the bill this month. More of a, yeah, I have an emergency. I can't pay my bills. More of a, the roof caved in and I need emergency funds kind of thing.
The snow made my roof cave.
Exactly. So are you guys comfortable with that?
Yes.
I left it very vague so that the chamber can really come in and define that, what that means. And I trust Kaylin and her team to really come up with some guidelines that make sure that we're capturing the intent. But I wanted to make sure, at least from your guys' perspective, that those 3 sort of buckets make sense.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Glad we're moving forward with some small business economic development.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
Is there anything else in here that you guys, those are sort of the The rest is basically legalese, from our attorneys, so.
No, looks good.
I move to approve the memorandum of agreement with the Condon Chamber of Commerce for Small Business Grant Program Administration as presented, subject to review and revisions of legal counsel.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the memorandum of agreement with the Condon Chamber of Commerce for Small Business Grant Program Administration as presented, subject to the review and revision of legal counsel. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Kaylin, we will get you a signed agreement, probably either later today or tomorrow.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I promise to make you guys proud of this investment.
I'm
Thank
sure we
you.
will be. Thank you.
See ya. Okay, let's move on to 5.3, which is Cedar Springs Road resurfacing update. Pat, what do you got?
So we presented a budget to Waste Management last week that we did, and Dave Lowe responded with an email which basically he's not sure that the road needs to be resurfaced.
What?
My first comment was, why does he get to make that decision?
And when was the last time he was here, you would see the road?
And
My
so
second
what
question.
we did was
Tell us how you really
So I
Everybody
went
knows how
back
I
in
feel.
and really looked at the host fees, road maintenance portion of the host fees agreement, and there is a bit of a provision in there that speaks to budget on or before January 15th and annually thereafter, counties shall submit a proposed budget for improvement and maintenance of the roadway to the standards set forth in paragraph 5.3 above. The budget shall itemize the project costs of the proposed improvements and maintenance for the calendar year. And we should be doing this every year, not just, which hasn't been happening. So the budget shall itemize the project cost of if Waste Management disagrees with the proposed budget, Waste Management may request within 15 days of receipt of the budget that the county obtain public bids for any maintenance activity in the proposed budget, which is what he's really doing. He's asked for an engineering study of the road to see what it really needs. And so I set that in motion with Dewey, and they also, Waste Management has also offered to pay for that, which in this agreement says they're going to pay for 80% of it. So he's willing to pay for that, and we're moving forward with, Dewey talked to Tennyson yesterday, and we're just trying to get that in place so we can get some sort of documentation that what repairs need to be made. Had Dewey do another inspection of the road, and we're all in agreement that it needs to be resurfaced and begin to groove out. And we don't want to get a situation where liability is a problem,
Oh, yeah.
one thing.
You got heavy
and
trucks
that,
on there. I'm surprised.
and I have not reached out to Dave yet, so. It's, we're moving forward with what we need to do according to the agreement, and
Okay, good.
we're in a better place than we were a year ago because we have submitted the budget.
Hallelujah. Thank you for taking care of that.
And the total cost also, there's a little bit of a discrepancy because it does say in the host fees agreement, and I tried to catch Nathan yesterday and I'll talk to him either tomorrow or next week, but it does say in here that there's supposed to be an itemized or not an itemized, but a place in the budget that account that this goes into that's not touched, and we're a little bit, it's a little bit confusing in our budget. We're showing 422,000 in there. Someplace Nathan came up with their 661,000. Waste Management thinks there's around 700,000. So we can get to what that number is because we know what was paid into that fund, and there really hasn't been anything come out of it. Waste Management in this agreement was supposed to put in 3 cents per ton, and they decided to put in 10 to try to increase that pot. So when this time came along, they'd have more of it already available, so they didn't have to dig it out of the annual budget. And the total, even at the 660, it's going to cost the county probably around a couple $100,000, and then 500 or 600. it's not something that doesn't fit in the county budget as it is today. So
Mhm. Okay,
we got some dialing to do on that, and we probably need to look at our budget and make sure that we're putting those funds into an account of its own that's not mixed up with anything else.
Mhm.
And I can't tell if that's not the case.
What's been happening. Budget's coming up, so.
It
that'll be
is.
fun.
Good time to straighten it out. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, let's move on to discuss road and weed department office manager position description and recruitment. You again, Pat.
A little change to this. Yesterday when I was at the courthouse, I talked to Terry a little bit, and because of her looking at her retirement insurance costs, she's gonna back up a little bit.
Mm.
And at least until the end of the fiscal year and possibly the end of the calendar year.
Okay,
She's supposed to keep me posted, but there's no real reason to move too fast on doing any posting or replacement until we know where she's at. And it gives me some time to really analyze that position and what's going on. I've got some information from her, and you had reached out to Brian Worley in regards to payroll. What's your thoughts on that? Because I know that there's the payroll reporting or time card reporting that they're doing through Terry that has to be accounted through Iris has a lot to do with tracking information for reporting for the grants that the county receives from the state.
mhm.
So,
When I reached out to him, and that has been over a year ago, he told me that they were developing, I think he called it a module, I'm not really sure the technical term, that would allow for the road department employees to put in their time electronically and have that and attach it to projects the same as they do now, where now they're just writing their hours and then a number for whatever the project is. And that would go to Dewey. Dewey would then be able to approve, and from my understanding, that could go to Iris, and then Iris could be connected directly to CHAS, which is Ellen's payroll system. So that we wouldn't have to pass time cards from the road shop to Terry and then have Terry's.
So at this
information
point,
out
are
to
we just passing the total time needs to be paid to Ellen somehow manually? And she's paying, cut checks from the road department?
I see Terry's on there. Terry, can you kind of describe? Mutes.
I can do it.
I'm not sure how the handoff looks
I'll
between
get to it.
Terry and Ellen.
Yeah.
That one, Terry, are you there? Maybe? She might not be able to respond. I'm not sure what the handoff looks like between Terry and Ellen.
Okay.
But I did ask if those systems could be connected, and Brian thought that they could and suggested that we just connect Ellen with their techie people to figure out how to connect the
Okay,
two
I'll follow up
systems.
on that, Ryan, because I want to look at the rest of this too. And I think there's probably some road maintenance tracking that can be done through Iris that we're not doing right now that would help us for budgeting and future planning for road maintenance and projects. So.
Yeah, he seemed to think, and I can't imagine that they haven't had this request from other counties who want to try to automate that. So I can forward you the email. Like I said, it's been over a year that I touched base with him on it,
Okay,
but
because I've talked to him since, I just haven't gone into it. I've been basically talking to him about the maintenance, equipment maintenance side of it. There's a lot more to it that we could probably benefit from if we get it set up right. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I'll forward you what I have from him and take it from there. Okay, so it sounds like this for now will be put on hold, and then we'll circle back at a later date with once Terry kind of has a time frame in mind and you have a chance to touch base with Brian. Okay, let's move on to 5.5, which is public health transition update, and Holly Winslow's on as well. So I'll ask her to kind of fill in the blanks if I miss anything. Holly and I had a conversation with our OHA liaison people that are going to help us through this transition a little over a week ago, maybe 10 days ago. And so basically this was a sort of walk us through what they see as next steps. And so the sort of big things that are on the horizon that we're working on, one is getting formal approval from OHA to have the less than full-time health administrator position that we discussed, the point one. So I got a document and I see Kimberly Lindsay's on. Kimberly allowed us to borrow the one that she used over in Grant County. So we've got a good template that we can kind of use for ours. So I would expect, I'm hoping to have the letter and the job description over for the next court meeting for us to formally approve, and me to be able to submit that to OHA for their approval. They did tell us that that cannot be effective until July 1, because we are not the public health authority until July 1. And so one of the things Holly and I talked about, and maybe Holly can speak to a little bit more, is whether we need to put together an interim agreement between the county and the health district, just to make sure we're clear about what expectations are, to make sure that we are covering startup costs, all of those kinds of things. Since Holly can't act in an official capacity until July 1, it felt like it was a little wishy-washy in the meanwhile. And so I just wanted to get your feedback on if that's something that you would like me to work with Holly on and our legal counsel on bringing back an agreement. And I think for her board too, that would also give them some
Yeah, we need
ease
some
and-
guidelines on what we do expect,
we
because
need to
there's
know
the
what-
transition period that
What
she's
kind
gonna
of
need
costs
to
we're
work.
looking at between now and then.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Okay, so Holly and I will work with Lori and get something nailed down that we can put into place in the interim. And I'm thinking right now that we will probably just need to use SIP discretionary funds, honestly, to pay for it. And with the hope that once we dissolve NCPHD, some of that money might come in and sort of backfill places that we had to spend. But we don't really have a line item at this point to take it out of. So we may just have to pull it out of some discretionary pots that we have.
I know there was an original presentation about 80,000 she was thinking. Right.
Yeah, does that sound about right, Holly? About 80,000 for the transition? Are you there? Maybe. She unmuted. She might be looking at her figures. Holly, are you there? We can't hear you, but I think what we'll do is we'll circle back with that. The other big piece is figuring out which programs we're going to actually be administering. So we'll have to notify OHA of that. They also, as part of their process, need us to notify them. I think they said 75 days before the start date. So we have some time. If we're going to be subcontracting out things. So we'll have to give them notification of where environmental health is going to go, which program areas. The big one that's sort of in question, honestly, is the WIC program. And so Holly and I have a meeting with the WIC staff folks at OHA tomorrow for them to walk through expectations with us. And then I'll kind of be looking to Holly on, are you going to be able to meet their expectations with the staff that you have? Or if not, do we need to look at subcontracting it out to a different entity? So that could, if Holly decides that that's not a good fit for the district, then we could look at either contracting back out to North Central Public Health, Umatilla Memorial Head Start does it for some counties. So there's some other entities in our area that potentially we could partner with if the district decides that it's not a good fit for them.
So will the contracting out go through the county or through South Gilliam?
Through us.
So that will be, because all of that in the initial proposal was part of the, when we're doing the budgeting, is part of the cost of what we're paying North Central. I mean, we keep that all in line.
Right.
Yeah, so we would, like for the WIC program, we would be getting a certain, based on the formula, we get a certain percentage, and then that would just pass through the county to whoever we decided was gonna actually run the program. So if that's the district, it would be them. And so we just notify OHA, here are the subcontractors that we want to use for each of these program areas. We still have, how this works we have the contract and the responsibility to the state to make sure that the program is run the way it's supposed to, but then we have subcontracts. And the expectation is we need to put in place policies in order to monitor our subcontractors to make sure that they are following our obligations with the state, if that makes sense. And we just pass through the money from the state. It's a similar thing to what we do with Kimberly's folks for our mental health stuff. They have the subcontract underneath us, but we have the actual legal obligation to the state to fulfill the state requirements.
Okay.
And I think those were the big things that we're tackling. So we're just kind of moving steadily. We're getting some meetings set up, like I said, with some of the specific programs. And at some point, Holly and I will be coming to you with a recommendation on here are the programs and where we think they should fit, and getting your feedback. And then once we sort of have a decision from the court, then OHA will be drafting the actual agreement that we need to sign with them saying, we want these programs and we want you to send the money to us. And here's how we're going to handle each of the program areas. So,
And I would request that we get a court meeting update on where we're at from now until this is implemented, so that we had a lot of questions around the community about what's going on with it. I'd like to stay at the speed of where we're at. I knew that Shelley's the one that told me that you'd met with OHA, and that's why I wanted to put on the agenda to see what we found out.
where we are, yeah, we're moving ahead. So yeah, definitely we can put it and just make it a standing agenda item and just update. I think we'll start seeing a lot more product coming out as we go, now that we've sort of had our kickoff meetings with folks.
The time will go fast.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're already through almost a sixth of our transition period.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll go fast. Okay, so in terms of follow-up items, expect that at the next meeting, I will have a job description for the administrator and a letter for us to approve to send to OHA requesting the part-time position. I'm not sure legal counsel will be able to turn around the agreement with the district, but I'll put it on Lori's to-do list today and ask her if she can expedite that. So we may have a draft of that as well for the next meeting. And yeah, that's all I've got. Questions on that piece? Okay.
Appreciate it.
Let's move into new business. 6.1 is consider approval of resolution number R 2022-01, a resolution declaring a county vehicle as surplus. So this is the 2008 Chevy Impala that we have. It has 136,000 miles on it. It's 14 years old, served its useful life. Teresa looked up the Blue Book estimate on it. It's between 1,100 and roughly 1,600. So the recommendation is that we go ahead and surplus it. We have been putting our surplus vehicles on, well, the sheriff's office has for us on the publicsurplus.com, and just setting a minimum bid. And actually that has worked really well. So that would be the recommendation here. And I should note that this is a fleet vehicle. At this point, I'm not necessarily recommending that we buy a new fleet vehicle because the fleet vehicles, frankly, are just not being used with COVID. I mean, we've got a few employees who, Amy's a good example, is going to Norcor on a regular basis to check in with youth that she's got lodged there, things like that. But other than that, I mean, the vehicle that's usually assigned to me, I don't think, aside from our meetings down here, I don't think it ever leaves the county parking lot. So I'm not sure that buying a new vehicle at this point is necessary, and I'd like to just kind of propose we
was
can
thinking about
see.
that this morning,
Was
how
that
much money the county has
Was
saved.
it housed down here?
It's the one that's housed down here, yeah.
We haven't paid for those vehicles or other transportation costs for 2 years, so.
Yeah.
We've saved a lot.
We have saved a lot of money. So if you guys are in agreement, I would be looking for a motion to adopt the resolutions. We can surface it.
I move to adopt resolution number R 2022-01 as presented.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number R 2022-01 as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's move on to Community Counseling Solutions update. Kimberly.
Good morning.
Morning.
Everyone, or well, see a couple of you and hear some other voices. Congratulations on the transition with public health. I think that's very exciting, and I think that'll be a good move for Gilliam County. And I echo what Judge Farrar said, that it's very similar. I just would add that the documentation for like the subcontracting is so much more on the public health side than it is on the mental health side. It's maybe a little bit overkill in my opinion, but anyways, happy to provide any documents or continue to provide documents that will be helpful, that will save some time. So that's great. Okay, so I want to start off by apologizing because I should have sent the documents that I just sent to you. I should have sent those last week, but nonetheless, you can take a look at them if you want. I have just 5 agenda items that I wanted to go through and then see if you had any questions or concerns or just anything that has maybe came up from the community on CCS activities. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is the Behavioral Health Regional Network grant that came out. It came, you'll probably recall Measure 110 passed. Measure 110 decriminalizes a lot of drug crimes. And it took all of the dollars that have been coming in for marijuana tax and it put them in a separate pot of funds for treatment. And they initially said that those funds would go out to addictions providers that had existing contracts, but they changed that. They decided to put it out all to RFP. That decision was made, I think, last spring or in the summer. They had a planning committee that worked on the RFP. The RFP was supposed to come out in August. Again, it came out in November. In fact, it came out the week of AOC, and entities had 2 weeks to respond. And I want to highlight this because it's the largest amount of dollars that have ever been put into the addiction system. It's over 300 million. And entities had 2 weeks to meet with their communities, plan for how they would spend the money, and then respond to the RFP. And I hope that you feel that that is absurd in the same way that I did. They did get a lot of feedback at the end of the first week, so they extended it. They did extend it by 1 week. So there was 3 weeks when all was said and done to get the responses in. And then the state was supposed to make the selection by the end of December. They've now moved that back to the end of February. Also need to acknowledge that there was, the state acknowledges that the RFP was rushed and it was poorly planned, and there were problems with the wording for it. So we were told that we could initially send in one application. Then they said, well, you can send in one application, but we need the budgets broke out. So we have all of that documented. Budgets broke out by county. Let me be more specific. CCS by definition is a region, and we already kind of are doing some of what they're wanting to happen regardless. So that's good. Anyways, they wanted it broke out by county. So I sent in one email with 5 different budgets for the 5 different counties. And I sent it in a day early, and I was feeling very proud of myself and all of the hard work that we had done, and going into vacation, just feeling good about it. And then about a week later, I received an email from the state that I hadn't sent in 5 different emails. I'd only sent in one email with 5 different budgets. So I did get Representative Smith involved in a couple of other legislatures because I had all of the documentation, and we were able to get that changed, although it was really painful. I'm sure I've made an enemy with a few people in contracts and procurement. The dollar amount was just too great to not advocate for. So I wanted to I'm going to shift there. There's a couple of pieces that were that the state was really wanting to see with these grants that I just felt, I mean, I didn't have time to make a whole bunch of phone calls. I just felt that it probably wasn't going to be very well received in Eastern Oregon. Probably the most controversial one is a safe using centers. So they with medication assisted treatment, like somebody who's doing, let's say, heroin, they want to get off heroin and take a medication or take a substance that's legal, something like methadone. That would be a safe using site. So they could come and receive the alternative medication assisted treatment. They could come there 24/7. Be under the care of a prescriber, a nurse would be present, and they could use in that location. Sometimes when people are using it's dirty needles, and it's like they can get infections. There's some things that are not good, and the safe using sites address that. However, I just didn't think I didn't put those in the application because I just didn't think that it would go over too well in our smaller communities. That downtown Condon, for example, had a building that was advertised as a safe using site. So I just wanted to be very candid about that. And if there would have been more time, we would have done more planning and had those conversations, but it just didn't work to do that. And let you know that I made an executive decision. I did put in for a lot of funding for additional treatment staff. I put in funding for housing support for folks that are struggling with addiction, that need clean housing or sober housing. So there's stipends that are a part of that. Also stipends for transportations and vouchers, people to provide support with rental assistance, like dedicated funding for 1 year for rental assistance for people that are working to maintain their sobriety. So the total amount of money, you can see in the document that I sent you, when you go to take a look at it, the total amount of money for Gilliam County, it ends up being very similar to what we would have received if this was given out on a per capita basis by county. The total amount for Gilliam County is $1,082,000. That's over a 2-year period, so it works out to about $540,000 per year. And again, you can take a look at the budget and see what's in there. There was a narrative that was in front of that document. And again, we should hear back the end of February on whether or not we receive those funds. Now, it's very competitive. I haven't heard of any other entity that put in for Gilliam County. or Wheeler. I know that there's another entity that put in for grant. There's 2 or 3 entities that put in for funding for Morrow, and probably 5 that put in for Umatilla County. So we may receive something, we may receive nothing. I'm pretty confident that we'll receive something for Gilliam County. I just don't know what the dollar amount will be, or if they'll cut any of the specific programs that I put in there. All right, I wanted to pause there to see if you have any questions or comments on that.
Questions for Kimberly?
Now, what was the total amount to the state for that?
Well, the total CCS funding request for all 5 counties was just over 11 million. The request for Gilliam County is just over 1 million. Again, that's a biennial amount. The state has $300 million available. I will also add that there were 400 entities in the state that put in for funding. So it's very competitive, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out.
So how well does Measure 110 work in driving people to treatment?
I don't see Sheriff Betancourt on here.
He's not here.
I'll just be candid. I did not vote for Measure 110. It's entirely voluntary. So the officers approach the individual that's in the process of using or, distributing, depending upon the size of the amount of drugs involved, the person is given a citation, it's like a traffic citation, only there's no fines involved, and they're encouraged to call this number, and it's all voluntary to get voluntary treatment.
They got $300 million that probably won't get used because nobody's going to volunteer.
Well, it is going to go out to the treatment providers. I was like, initially I thought, let's just stage a protest. Let's not respond to this, because I don't think this is going to get people into treatment. I just don't see it working. And there's been like 100 people that have called the helpline since this was rolled out 6 months ago. And people are not voluntarily accessing treatment. So the money's going to treatment and supports to individuals, but there's not necessarily a large number of people that are pouring in. Numbers haven't changed for people that are coming into treatment. I was like, gosh, so I just feel like it'd be political, it's a lot. There's a lot of things that we can do with the funding, especially for housing for our existing population. So that's the reason why I responded. But I think Measure 110 is horrible.
So Kimberly, I understand though, the state's not limiting, the funds aren't limited to just the people who are calling the hotline, right? So you'll be able to use that for accessing through other avenues, access services. So
absolutely, yep, you nailed that well. There's people that are coming in and receiving services that would benefit from rental assistance. They're having a hard time making ends meet, and we know that when there's that kind of stress, they might struggle with their sobriety. And so if we can help make them a little bit more successful, then we want to do that. There's people that would like help building a resume. So we put in some funding for supported employment positions, and there, there's more employment in Gilliam County. So, there's more positions that are going to come from this. So hopefully I will have an update on that next time we meet. In the last legislative session, there was funding approved to add more people to the mobile crisis rotation. CCS, it's a good problem to have. We struggle a little bit because we've done mobile crisis for a very long time. We funded it with other funds because we believe that it's very important. So there are counties that don't have 24/7 mobile crisis. These dollars are going to be very helpful to them. In the email that I sent you, I include the amount that will be coming for all of the counties, but you can see that mobile or the Gilliam County's amount, and again, this is a biennial amount. Gilliam County's amount is, hang on just a second, 34,367. So an additional 17,000 per year, which again is helpful. What we will do is we'd like to add an addictions person to the on-call rotation so that when people respond, they'll both be a mental health person as well as an addiction person, because we do know that oftentimes alcohol or drug use is on board contributing to the crisis. So that'll be an amendment that's coming to Gilliam County that I'll sign in the next month or so. I also sent a copy of the CCS strategic plan. So next time when I meet with you, I'll have a nice little booklet that I will share with you. We do a strategic plan every 3 years. We worked on this plan this last summer. And I'll just quickly, whoops, sorry about that. I'm just going to quickly pull that up and see if you have any questions on that. Thought I had it pulled up, but I didn't.
Questions for Kimberly?
So again, I'll have a booklet for you, but we have 4 strategic objectives that we'll be working on. Improve and diversify the supports that we're offering to the community. So specific programming, what are the gaps, or where could we improve those services? And then supporting our very best asset, our employees. That's the second one, attracting and retaining exceptional talent. And then the last one, this isn't necessarily one that I would have voted for, but it was a democratic process. The last one is increasing revenue, and the staff are excited about that because when they do that, then there's more programming that they can offer. So we'll go over that next time I meet with you. Hopefully I'll be there in person. The next document, it's a compliance program review. You know, oftentimes we talk about what's going on out in the community. I think it's important that you as commissioners see how we're doing underneath the hood, so to speak. So annually we do a compliance program review looking at our policies and procedures and how well we're adhering to them for ethics, for HIPAA, for security policies. So I have that full document and that I emailed to you that is probably good bedtime reading. The good news is we're doing well overall. There are some areas that we need to address, and we've developed some plans around those. Last but not least, we're really excited that the state reached out to us to talk to us about expanding the warm line. So again, the warm line is, it's a number that people can call across the state, and we also get calls from other states in the nation wanting to talk with people who have lived life experience about mental health and addictions issues, but they don't necessarily want to call a crisis line. They don't want law enforcement to show up at their home, but they would like some support. So the state is wanting us to add a bilingual component. They're also wanting us to make it 24/7. Right now it's about 18 hours a day. We do have rollover lines depending upon what time it is. There's 2 to 3 people that are answering calls. So their investment, they have funded it since 2008. They've continued to increase their funding every couple of years, and they did increase it this last year. but now they're looking to do another increase. So I think the Warm Line is a really cool program. It's neat that it started in Wheeler County with 2 farmers. I love to talk about that. One of those 2 individuals still works for us, provides great employment opportunities to people all over the state. There's about 40,000 calls a year that come into it. And each call costs about $20, which is a lot less than a crisis call, which gets upward, can get into $200 or $300, depending upon the length of the call.
Kimberly, the state's looking at increasing the funding for that. Is that something that would be helpful for us to weigh? Is that the legislature that's looking at that, or is that the governor's office, or who is controlling those funds? And would it be helpful for us to weigh in support of increased funding?
So it's Oregon Health Authority, and it's some discretionary dollars that they have. And if you want to send a letter to them supporting that, I'd be happy to put a little draft together for you.
Yeah. They're nodding their heads. Yes. So if you could send a draft over, we'd like to take a look at it.
Absolutely. Yep. So those are some things that I thought might be of interest. The Gilliam County positions are fully staffed. Mary Helen, and as always, does a great job. She's just incredible. You have some school-based counselors that are doing an excellent job as well, and Lisa Helms supervises those positions. I just feel like in Gilliam County, we have a rock star staff. I hear good things back from the schools, good things from the community. I can't remember when I last had a complaint. I'm trying to think about it. I can't remember the last time that I had a complaint. So would like to see if there's any concerns about mental health or addictions or the developmental disability program that's been brought to your attention. Any suggestions that you have for us on things that we can improve or do better?
I don't. One question I had for you, just generally, what we're hearing, the impact that the pandemic has had in at least other communities is sort of upticks in addiction, upticks in mental health, people reaching out for counseling, mental health assistance, treatment. Are you seeing that trend locally as well, or is that, I'm curious whether that's happening here. Are you seeing more of a demand for services, folks reaching out to you in Gilliam County, or have we maybe missed some of that trend that's happening in other parts of the country?
I haven't heard about it from addictions for Gilliam County, so I'm going to look into that and I'll get back to you. So I'm just making myself a note for that. I think the mental health referrals are about on par to what they were in 2020 before the pandemic happened. But I'm also going to confirm that we see that data at the advisory board meetings. And so I'm just going off of my memory. I think that's about the same. But again, I will get back to you. I do want to comment on the kids. So just Gilliam County numbers. Okay. With the school-based counseling, we are able to work with kids in a preventative way before, and often, though not always, help so that it doesn't become a full-blown diagnosis. We are seeing, though, that kids are really struggling significantly in ways that we did not see before the pandemic. And so those school-based counselors are busy across the board. They're busy. And and the upticks that we've seen within CCS, even if it doesn't show up in Gilliam County numbers, have been on the adolescent side, especially, I said adolescent, but they have been with the kids, and more significantly so with the younger kids. So like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th graders.
Interesting. Other questions for
Hey,
Kimberly?
Kimberly, I know last time you did a presentation, I was going to try to hook up with you and do a little deeper dive into conversation on the CCS and little educational stuff for me. I still like to do that. I could get a little, I can make a better commitment now.
I will send you an email,
Okay.
and I would love to connect. I know last time you were busy and you'd said you'd get back to me, and I just know that there was so much going on. So be happy to do that. Drive over to where you are. If you just wanted to do a video meeting, that's also fine.
For CCS 101 is, she did that for me the first couple of months after I took office, and
Yeah, I'd appreciate.
there's a lot of funding streams and things that it's helpful to have
Yeah,
her
and
walk you through
I
them.
have some questions around addiction and stuff too, so.
I will follow up. So I'm going to follow up on numbers. I'm going to follow up with you, Commissioner Shannon, to set up a time for us to meet. I also just want to say thank you for your support. You know, there's little things that go on behind the scene with Teresa, and you, Judge Farrar, so thanks for the emails back and getting stuff into the state, especially on the the DD side. There was a little bit of work recently, so I appreciate that. But just my relationship with you is so important to me. The support that I get from you and the agency receives from you, and I listen to other counties. I hear that in some cases the relationship is not so good, and I don't take for granted what I have. So thank you. And if you ever need anything or you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to call, text, email. We want to do a great job for you.
Well, and I just want to say that what CCS provides our little community, we could not do this on our own. And so we are very fortunate that we have you here, and as an advocate who is constantly thinking about what's the next thing. So thank you.
You're very welcome. I love what I do.
It shows.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it shows.
All right, other questions for Kimberly? All right, Kimberly, thanks. It's always good to see you.
Thank you. Ditto. Have a good day.
You rest from time to time. I don't know how you do all of this.
Well, okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Let's move into announcements and next meeting. Next meeting is scheduled for February 2nd, 2022. That one will be in Condon. I think that is all in terms of court meetings. Sherry, what do you got going on?
We have Norcourt tomorrow. One of the other things, I know we talked last meeting about how we were restructuring the board and making some changes, and there's a new draft org chart out in the meeting agenda packet for tomorrow. So if people are interested in the changes that are kind of going forward, we're going to hire a business manager, and that's job description has been a draft as well. So if you're interested in that, we meet at 10 tomorrow, and we're Zooming because of COVID, and we have been since 2020, and that's been working out well for us. So, and then I'll have Capco this month as well. I don't know if it's Friday or next Friday. But anyway, soon.
Fantastic.
And then Frontier Telenet, I was gonna dial into that this week, and the port meeting this afternoon. Zoom into all that stuff. I like
Nice. You
I
can
like
zoom from
Zoom.
home and
I like Zoom,
jump from meeting to meeting.
right?
Yeah, what do you
can
got?
so much more.
Exactly.
Well, I would just soon show up in person, but
That's an in-person meeting person, yeah.
yeah.
Which is nice, but
Mainly, I did go to the North Gilliam District meeting for part of it the other day. And then the main thing that's happened since then, Sherry gave me the key to the wheat lab, and I met with Dave Shute from Quorum. We went through the lab last week. Met with Sheriff Report down here too. He brought a silent partner and a transportation broker with him, and we went out to the facility, and they're really sound positive about doing something. I know he was going to do a presentation of some sort to report tonight about it. What they want to do is build. They want the lab. They don't want to sell the equipment because they need it.
Okay,
cool.
So
Awesome.
Now, don't forget some of that equipment belongs to the port.
yeah,
Are they aware of
I
what
know that
belongs to
Peter
them?
told me at one time there was something that went on. They put some equipment in there. I don't know what that is. I don't know if anybody even went to, Ron, do you know if anybody even knows what equipment out there belongs to the port?
Nathan's usually our go-to,
Yeah,
just from his years.
be a record of it somewhere.
Mm,
But my suggestion was that the port will have to take the lead on it, the county support behind that. If they'd like to build 3 15,000 square foot warehouses, which are fairly simple buildings and pole buildings with cement floors, and do it at Shelter Station. So
Great.
we have
Yeah.
some things that could potentially develop. We're waiting for some information from them on. They've done a little preliminary costing on buildings and stuff, so we can start looking at what that is. I can't imagine that, and it might be off, but I can't imagine that 3 buildings that size and that type of construction would be much more than $1.5 million. And they're talking paying, $5,000 a building monthly lease and $15,000 on $1.5 million to pay back in 5 or 6 or 7 years. Something like that. I know that in 15,000 on $1 million to pay back in about 5 years. So pretty good
many-
payback on investment, and
Employees are they looking at?
they will get to about 25 to 30. It won't be, they'll do a gradual one warehouse at a time. And it's really bringing in heavy truck loads and separating and putting the product in that they ship back out in small trucks and LTL loads that go back out. Scott's is their biggest customer. The product is coconut-based product, and so there's a lot of benefit for it. They're even looking at, or they're presently in the process of doing stuff like wood pellets for cooking, smokers.
So the one thing we might want to get ahead of, it sounds, because it's an ag-based product and they would be using the lab presumably for actual testing and things like that.
Yeah, it would fit into that.
I think we
It has to
still
fit the
might want to connect them with the EDA and just have maybe even Biden's office kind of lean on them a little bit to get us an answer back, just so that doesn't, sometimes the EDA has held us up in the past when we've had prospective people. So
Sure.
I'm happy to make that connection, or if you want me to.
Well, we'll see what, I gotta get some information back from them. We just need to,
Yeah, if they could even just give us a synopsis, doesn't have to be long, paragraph. Here's what we're doing, here's what we're looking at, and just running it by our EDA contact to see if that fits with we're gonna be out from under that agreement pretty soon, but for at least the initial couple, I think we've got, 3 years left on it or something?
I think it's 3, maybe 3, 2.5, yeah.
on that, because I believe facility maintenance stuff falls under you.
Under me.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
There are some roof tiles that are coming off that building we ought to address pretty quick. If it looks like a wind damage problem.
Okay.
And do you have access to some of the communication that I had with the EDA? I know Lisa was copied on that, but I can send you the last person that I
That would be,
communicated with the EDA and get you hooked up with that guy.
just making a note. Yeah, that would be the only thing. I think this sounds great.
We'll see where it goes. You never know on this deal.
Never know. That would be great
Sounds
though.
very promising.
Anything else you got?
That's all I know.
For me, let's.
Oh, I do have one other thing. We probably need to get some, circle back is a new word. On this grant stuff, I met with the weed master yesterday, and then he's got some grants out there he has no idea how to go get.
Okay,
And we continue to kind of put that on the back burner. We need to move that up to what are we gonna do for us? You know, we've got county revenue grants we want to miss out on, so that whole county issue, I mean, for the stuff for our, revenue that actually comes into Gilliam County,
mm-hmm.
we don't want to miss that. And he says, I'm not a grant writer, I need help.
I can have a discussion. Well, kind of what I'm thinking on that particular one is I wonder if one of the other weed departments
Maybe, he said we used to have.
might have some.
Terry McElroy used to do those and was really good at it, but he's got nothing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not his skill set, which I can say because. Okay. Anything else on that? For me, yesterday, the Frontier 911 board met for our quarterly meeting. It was fairly uneventful. The one thing that continues to come up, which I will just keep harping on quarter after quarter, is there continues to be a pretty significant disconnect between the 911 board and the Telenet board on expenditures. And so Sheriff Betancourt in particular, who is authorizing payments on the 911 side, has some frustrations and questions about why 911 is being billed for the things that it's being billed for. And so I pointed out to the board yet again that it may make sense to combine the two entities into one, so that we stop shuffling money from one to the other and nobody knows what the other one is doing. And yesterday there was actually more people who thought that that might be something worth exploring. So I just wanted to put that on your radar, that continues to be a source of frustration for our sheriff, the disconnect between the two, and something that he and I have been trying to move our partners on the 911 side and on the Telenet side to maybe reconsider how we've structured those.
So who's moving, Sherman County or where?
So Sherman County Sheriff was much more open to it yesterday than he has been in the past. The Wheeler County Sheriff, I think, is open to it. Jefferson County, I think, will be open to it because the question keeps, anytime we're starting to run into new expenses, the question comes up, should Jefferson County be paying more? And so I think, particularly on the Frontier Telenet side, they don't have a voice at that table. And I would expect that their commissioners and Jeff Rasmussen, their administrator, will start saying, wait a second, we need to be at the table if you're going to be expending these dollars. So their sheriff was there yesterday. He was nodding his head when I was saying, this is going to be on you. I mean, basically that's what we're talking about. Gary is upset because the cost to connect Jefferson County are being passed on to 911. Gary doesn't think that's where they should be passed. He thinks Jefferson County should be cutting Frontier Telenet a check, but we don't have an agreement with Jefferson County. The 911 center does. So it's all convoluted and confusing. And I suspect over time, Jefferson County will come around to the thinking that if they're going to be paying more, they want to vote at the table. So I suspect they will get there if they're not already there. The holdouts are my fellow judges, honestly.
Didn't quite understand that.
Both.
Yeah. And I,
Didn't quite get
for different reasons, I think, but they both have things that give them pause about the idea of changing. So I just wanted to update you that that's something that is still in discussion.
Okay.
Which, speaking of which, as Sherry alluded to, the Frontier Telenet Board is meeting on Friday. And not a whole lot of significant things on the agenda. It's mostly housekeeping. During our last meeting, which was several months ago, we had hired a manager, and so it'll be interesting to kind of see what he has been working on in the interim. The other, I also alluded to, Holly and I are meeting with, starting to meet with some of the OHA projects, different program areas. So we have one tomorrow with the WIC program. And then I am also meeting on Friday afternoon with MCED is moving forward. They have formed a task force to look at including us, expanding their border. And so that little task force is meeting on Friday afternoon, so I will be joining them. They are very interested. To their credit, they want to make sure that they can meet our expectations. And so
Is there some resistance in that?
I think where the resistance, if there is resistance, where it's coming from is they have a very delicate balance between their Washington and Oregon members. And so they just want to make sure that if they're adding another Oregon county, that they're doing it in a way that is not
Tipping scale.
exactly. So one of the things Jessica talked to me about was voting, and excuse me, one of the things we talked about was the county would, under what we're currently talking about, that we would get one vote, a board seat, and then they have for like their court and chamber, those rotate. And so Jessica had asked, do we want it to rotate through Gilliam County? Originally, they were going to suggest not, but actually this task force felt like Gilliam County deserved to be in the rotation as well, which was a pleasant surprise and frankly more than I thought they were going to give us. So, which we have some great, between Kaylin, the new board at the port, there's, I think, people who would be engaged at that table. So, anyway, all to be determined, but I think we at least have an initial, they've started the conversation. I think if we can get the balance right between Oregon and Washington for them, then it sounds like we could potentially reach an agreement and move forward. But just keep in mind for folks who are following this, that it's a lengthy process to change the boundary. Both economic development districts need to approve. We need to send a formal request. Both of the governors, because it's a by-state, MCED's a by-state, both Governor Brown and Governor Inslee both need to say that they support it, and then it's a federal decision. So it's a multi-layered process to get that border changed. And other than that, those are the big things I've got going on. Anything else for the good of the order? We will, for those who typically are applying for grants from us, that should be opening shortly, our grant programs. We do have budget coming up here in a couple of months. So I'm starting to get calls from organizations who are planning their projects and grant applications. So I'm just putting this out as a marker for anybody who typically applies.
What's the deadline of the first round? Yeah. March?
Usually comes in March, doesn't it?
March 10th, is that sound right?
Like mid-March. Yeah. So folks, definitely be looking for, we typically notice it in the paper. It's obviously on the website. But be looking for that if you're, I'm looking at you in fact. If you are typically an applicant, do not forget, because those deadlines come up really fast. So other than that, it is 11:24. If there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting.